Am I making the right decision? Am I on the right path? What if it doesn't work out? These are the types of questions that often ruminate through our minds as we decide what our next steps are. Welcome to Normalize the Conversation. I'm your host, Francesca Reigeter, and today I'm joined by licensed clinical social worker and co-founder of K&B Therapy, Kaelly Arellano. In this episode, Kaelly shares her path from first-generation college student to entrepreneur, delving into the challenges and triumphs of opening her private practice. Discover the unseen struggles behind the scenes, from managing anxieties to balancing confidence with moments of doubt. Kaelly, thank you so much for joining me today. I am super excited for our conversation, as you know. But before we begin, I just want to check in. How are you really?
Ooh, loaded question. I'm just kidding. I am I am good. I think I am excited about things in my life, but there's also newness in things that I'm doing on a personal level. I am going to be moving the next 2 weeks, which is very exciting, but it's been interesting because I couldn't wait to move. So I was ready for something bigger. Um, but now I'm kind of grieving in a way because this has been the apartment I've lived in for the last 4 years. So
Wow.
it has held a lot of space for me. It's been with me through establishing a business. It's been with me throughout the whole pandemic. It's been with me when, we brought in our new member of the family, which is our dog Juno. So I'm excited, nervous, but also very, very honored to be here with you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited you're here with me. And moving is so exciting and scary. Like,
Yes.
I know for me, I'm always so excited for something new in a new environment. But the minute I'm about to leave, it's like full on tears. I'm not ready to leave behind something that feels like a piece of me.
Mhm.
That's such a difficult thing to navigate. And I love that you brought that up because people think moving is just like the most exciting. My best friend's in the process of moving. She was just texting me. She was like, I was so excited until I was like, wow, I'm leaving behind what this place meant for me. And it was from living with one of her best friends to living with her boyfriend and like that transitional years in her life as she was getting ready for that. And it's a lot of grieving. It's exciting, it's fun, it's overwhelming. It also brings up a lot of grieving, and that's okay too. And she just wasn't expecting it. So nice that you talked about it because people don't, they think it's going to be the most fun, exciting process, and it can be, but it also can bring up grief, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, grief, when we think about grief, I don't think there's enough conversation on just like the spectrum of grieving. I think a lot of the conversation, or I think, at least even for me, when I would think of grieving for a long, long time, I think it was related to death, right? But we can grieve all sorts of things. And grief, it also doesn't have to be for a bad reason. It's moving, it is an exciting thing, but it is closing a chapter. The chapter remains even if we're on to a new one. But yeah, weird feelings. I also was like, oh, I can't wait to get out of here, find a new place. And then I was like, oh, all of a sudden I think I'm gonna miss the birds that I hear in the morning and the way the sun comes in. So it's been kind of funny.
Yeah, grieving really, you're right, there's not a lot of conversation outside, at least again for me, that isn't just the physical loss of a human being. A lot of
Yes.
times it's recently I've heard people talk a little bit more about grieving like the loss of relationships.
Mhm.
And I know for me, something that came up very recently within the past few months was grieving the change in, I guess, that transition from being undergrad college student where all your friends are together all the time, you're studying together, you're going out together, you live together, and then into that more adult world where everyone has jobs now and they're working and maybe you see each other once every couple of months and you're not together every day. And I was like grieving that big change in my life and no one was talking about it. I was like sitting home crying constantly, like I miss this.
And I thought I was, like, the only one feeling that way. So I wish there were more conversations on different types of grief and that normal and just normalize that
No,
things
that's
change
so
and it's
true.
hard.
But that's so true, I think that as you're sharing just the transition, it's like what we're grieving is different, like identities. So it's like because it's like it's you, but I think as an undergrad, as you're mentioning, when you live, for those who live on campus or something, or they live with roommates or close by a friend, it's like your whole community, your support system, everything is all in one place. And then I think, as you transition into yeah, different stages or work, I think that there are it takes more work. It takes more work to nurture friendships that mean a lot to you. And also people drift apart, and sometimes it's not because of something bad, it's just life. um and for me, I'll tell you that because now, I was telling you a little bit earlier, it's been 10 years since I started my journey of becoming a social worker. And one of my biggest regrets, and I don't have a lot of regrets in life because I think things pan out how they're supposed to. But when I look back, I'm like, I regret this, which is in grad school, I found that I connected with so many incredible human beings, and in not having these conversations like like you're mentioning, I think we graduated, and then we each got consumed with doing life, working, the day to day, and I lost touch with so many people. And now, I find that it takes a lot more effort to find friends, or connect with people that you can really relate to. And so that's one of my regrets because I thought, oh my goodness, I was in a cohort of like 100 people and 100 amazing people. I really enjoyed them. And why didn't I make that a priority to maintain those relationships and friendships? So yeah,
I
it's hard.
wish these were conversations that people were having with us while we're in school. And I know that one of my biggest fears is, I guess, seeing it with the transition from me and my friends from earlier in life and then going into grad school and graduating one day, hopefully, is, managing that shift in suddenly my life isn't half of the day in school and in class learning and being all together. Now we have different responsibilities and we might not be sitting in classrooms right next to each other. We could be in different cities, different states, and being able to manage that change in responsibility as well as those friendships, that social life, how you balance all of these different things. And then I guess also juggling that career path of what I want my future to look like because you're kind of figuring that out, figuring out how to maintain some sort of norm in your social life, and then also figure out how to just get started and make some kind of balance. It's like a
Yeah, you're right. It is a lot, and maybe that those are conversations that while in school could be had. Because again, I think it's a life transition, and these like losing sight of like these friendships, I think, can impact the transition. And so I wonder, yeah, I wonder if there could be more conversation in school, not just about theory or intervention or ways to address, a client, but also about, I don't know, it's kind of where like personal and professional meet, if you on a personal level maintained these friendships, like look around, or look around the screen, right? Depending on whether people are doing, in person or virtual. Schooling, right? Like look around. Um, who do you want to be intentional and continuing to connect with? These interventions and these theories will apply eventually. But what about right now and in the process? So life skills. We need
I
more of those.
we have to take a career development course. I think I'm taking that in the fall, and that's so important. So glad that they are going to sit there and help us kind of figure out our path.
Yeah.
However, I hope that they do a little bit on just staying connected with people and balancing outside of just the career because, of course, our careers are important, but so is being able to balance and walk that line of having friendships, having colleagues that we can refer out to, right? That's also important. We should be learning how to distinguish that a little bit within our peers in our classes now. I hope that we do get those conversations because right now you're kind of forced into group projects with people who don't do it on time or make your life very difficult. And then your perception of other students is, oh my goodness, do I have to ever talk to them again? They're making my life so difficult. So I hope that there's more stuff that brings us together instead of just I feel at least I'm so frustrated when someone isn't. I'm a very much like I get things done so early. I will have assignments done like a month before they're due. And then when you're in a group project, it's always the student who does it like the day of, the morning of, they're doing their part. Not for me.
Oh
Hopefully
my
there's something that
I was thinking, I'm like, oh my goodness, like group project. When was the last time I did one of those? But I guess like you do things once you start working collaboratively, but it's different. And like you said, I think it's not like we're getting graded on it necessarily, but for you, you are. But that's funny. I feel like I hadn't thought about a group project in a while.
I'm currently thinking about it because we have one this semester. And it's always like the first day of class too. I'm still going off on a tangent, but it's the first day of class when you don't really know anybody or you haven't like had a conversation yet enough to see their personalities where she's like, just pick 3 people and be in a group together. And
Yeah,
her
random.
entire grade is dependent on guessing who is going to be productive.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. I mean, I think that's very real, and I think that I guess you know we're talking about life skills, and it's like these group projects can be annoying when or overwhelming and frustrating when we don't work in the same way. But I guess other life skills that I guess it is making us forcing us to do is how do we communicate this? How do we set expectations? What if we have different expectations? Um, yeah, how do we navigate um yeah, these conversations that can be uncomfortable. And I guess maybe that's the life skill we get in it.
It's an important life skill, it is. Is it?
You're like, but
Do
I
I
do not
appreciate
like it.
it? Yeah.
Please don't sign me up for this anymore.
Life skill I don't wanna learn when my grade is dependent on it. I'd like to learn it when my grade where the idea of failing is not, like, hanging over my head. That would be great.
Oh my goodness.
But, going back to our initial conversation topic that we're gonna talk about today is your journey from being a student to then being a licensed clinical social worker to now an entrepreneur. Can you tell us more about your story?
Yeah. Well, student to licensed clinical social worker to entrepreneur. Okay. I mean, I think my journey as a student, so I'm the first in my family to attend college, receive higher education, and it's something I'm so proud of. And also, I think I always want to make it a point to talk about the the good and the difficult in my journey as a student because I don't know. I think that we often talk way too much about just the success of it all. Like I'd love to skip to being an entrepreneur, but like the part of being a student and becoming a licensed clinical social worker it is is major in how I show up as an entrepreneur, right? Or the successes of life, right? And so I think my journey as a student, so I at 18 years old, I left my home. I am the eldest daughter of two. My parents are immigrants. They are Mexican, and I am Mexican American. And it was this journey for me of my whole life. You know, my parents would tell me, you know, Mija, you know, you have to go and receive your education. Like that was always in my mind, and that was always something that was discussed. But when I was about what was it like 17 when we're like juniors or seniors, about to be seniors, I remember that my counselor asked me, you know, what is it that I'm going to go to college for? And at the time, I had no idea. I was like, I don't know. I know I have to go to college, but I don't know. And I was a big performer. I loved dancing and singing, and I was a part of the choir and cheer and dance team and musical theater. I mean, whatever there was to perform, I was there. That was something that I really, really enjoy. And I think now when I look back, I think it always related to storytelling. I think my performance of whatever I'm doing is a story that I'm sharing. And I think it was always super fascinating to me to like I still to this day, like I enjoy listening to lyrics of music, the sound of music, like what is the story that is, being told. Um, but when I go to college, my parents had told me like this is the key to success. And so I'm ready, I'm eager. And the reality was is I remember being on college campus and walking the campus and thinking, this was the thing that we've been working so hard for, because I felt very alone. I was very overwhelmed. And, of course, I would get calls from my parents like, Neha, how's it going? And I would always say that it was going well. And I think that for me, that came from a place, not because I couldn't tell them, because I knew I could, but it came from a place of how am I going to complain when, my heart is sitting at an AC'd classroom and like my dad's working out in the sun? Or how am I going to complain about feeling like I don't belong when I know like all the work that it took for my mom through her broken English to do the things that she accomplished. And so at the time it felt like I need to just hold it together. How am I going to not be grateful for all this? But I went like that for about 2 years, where it was just hard, but I wouldn't really talk about it. And I would go back and forth. I went to UC Irvine, and home for me was about 2 hours away. My hometown is Palm Springs. And so, I'd go visit home a lot. So it was really difficult to navigate the student life and being involved with my family and how much is the right amount. And I want to go and be there for birthdays, but then also that means I don't connect with peers. And then when I would stay and connect with peers, and I would feel guilty about missing out on other things. So it was like this tug of war all the time. But I think 2 years into it, then I found a mentor, and that changed things for me. Finding a mentor for me changed everything, because I felt very seen. I felt encouraged, and this person wanted to know not about you know just the things that I wanted to accomplish, but my story. And I've recently been reflecting on this. I talked about this maybe like 2 months ago, because I had never shared that story. And I was going to the UC Irvine Counseling Center to uh, interview to become a student life coach. So even though I was over here struggling internally, I wanted to be a student life coach to support other students in adapting to college. I mean, it's just hilarious when I look back. I'm like, I was trying to help people with things I didn't even know what I was doing, but that's also just what it is as clinicians, even now. There are certain things that we help our clients with, and we're like, yes, this sounds amazing. Then you shut it off and you're like, oh, wait, I'm not doing that. What's going on? Or I haven't gotten that together either. But in that interview, what was really powerful for me was I was ready to answer all of the interview questions. What are my strengths? What are my hopes? What's my experience, which at the time I didn't have much. I was just eager, and the question that counselor asked me was, who inspires you? And to me, it was one of those moments that I remember being in her couch and my eyes swelled up, and I talked about my mom, and I talked about my dad, and I talked about this journey. And it's almost like I said, I am struggling myself. But I want to figure out how to help others. And I think that will also help me. But what was really powerful was just, it's almost like her question took me home. It took me to what anchors me. And I think after that, I began to really learn the power of our story is so important throughout our journey. I think for 2 years, I wasn't connected to that. I think I was just trying to survive it all. And, get good grades and figure out like this college life situation. How am I a sister? How am I a daughter? How am I a friend? Like, how do I do all of this? And from there, I think it really grounded me to remember my story, to remember the people that inspired me and why did I get started to begin with. And so I guess when you fast forward, like student life for me then got better. It got better. I connected with other um, students who were a part of the program, doing something that we all connected with. And then I went to UCLA for my master's in social welfare. And at that time, I think, again, I feel like I've been guessing my whole life. Like, let's just see how this goes kind of thing. But I was a more confident person, even though there was so much I didn't know. And being the first or doing something for the first time is so overwhelming. But I think because I was more connected to my story, I didn't feel like I had to be a certain way. I felt like I owned who I was, and I was very curious to understand other folks and their stories and how do we relate? How are we different? How can we connect through the differences, through the similarities, I think it challenged me, grad school, but I was in a much better headspace and feeling a lot more empowered as a student. Um, and then the journey to licensure, I mean, the journey to licensure, I have experience in medical social work. I did internship at a hospital doing inpatient work, which was fascinating. It was so fast paced. And then after that, I went and worked at a community mental health agency, which was very different, but I wanted to do that because I wanted the experience of having long term clients. So there I did individual therapy, family therapy, a lot of parenting work, outpatient, school-based services, field-based services, and did I say groups? I also did groups. I mean, I did a lot in community mental health. I'm very thankful for that time that I worked at a community mental health agency. I think it really molded me into the clinician that I have become. It was also where I had the opportunity to, I've always been like a person who wants more, and I remember really enjoying outpatient work and thinking, well, I kind of want to know, how to be a supervisor. And so even though I was pretty content with where I was and the work I was doing, there was an opportunity to become a supervisor. And so when I transitioned to that, I think what happened for me was it was such a shift. I loved supervising. Um, but I think it's almost like the years of doing all the work really caught up to me. I think the workplace culture really impacted me. Um, and it was something that I had never really experienced since undergrad. It was like, because in undergrad, I want to say was the first time that I really I don't think I knew what it was at the time, but what I was experiencing was anxiety, 100%. I would feel it in my body. I wouldn't be able to sleep well, or my appetite would change, or I was nervous all the time, So it was anxiety, but I didn't know what to call it at the time. And then when you fast forward, I go through undergrad, grad school. I'm working a few years in community mental health before doing supervision. And I think the workplace culture really impacted me. And it was the first time that I once again felt like my mental health was really being impacted by this work, and the dynamics of the work, and was burnt out. And it was a very overwhelming time for me because, you know, I'm sure that as a student, we're eager, we're so excited, all of the things that we can do, how we can support, how we can make change, um, and there's dreams that we have, and so for me, when I was almost like, okay, I wanted to do this, check. Okay, what about this? Check. Okay, you know what? If there's an opportunity to be a supervisor, let's do it. Like, I want to learn how to do that. Check, check, check. Right. And so when you arrive to what you've been working so hard for and you feel this way, it's overwhelming and it's like, what's going on? I thought that this was what I have been working so hard for. So at that time, I knew that I needed to leave community mental health, but I was thinking, I'm going to go back to medical social work. I like the fast pace, maybe doing this long term situation. It's too much on my body, on my mind. Um, let's give it a go. So I began looking at that. But what happened for me and what led me to entrepreneurship was one of my coworkers, who is now my business partner. He said to me, Kaylee, like, what do you think about starting a private practice? It would be a group practice, and we could, we would talk about like our values and what we would hope to see in mental health services, and how do we bring in also culture and whatever, right? And I was stunned when he asked that, because at the time I was still in my 20s, and I thought, who am I to do this? I always imagined that, a private practice owner is going to be like, I don't know, an older person. I thought I'm going to be doing this when I'm almost about to retire, or when I'm like retired but working here and there. Like, that's what I imagined. And so entrepreneurship in 2020, we quit our jobs, full on, like we had nothing else to bet on except ourselves and this business, which was exhilarating, scary, but we did it. And I feel so honored and excited. And I think sometimes I don't think about the journey that much, because again, we get into like, okay, and what's for today? Okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, right? And when I look back, it's like it took a lot of courage to do that, to do what we did, to leave our jobs, no backup plan. The backup plan is us, and trying to sort this out. There is no hiding. Like, we can't hide anywhere. We have to just figure it out. And so we've been in business for almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in September. And it has been a whirlwind, so much growth, exciting things. There's also been ebb, like, just like, okay, hold on, what are we doing? How do we do this? So much not knowing and sitting in the not knowing before it's like, okay, and how do we figure this out? Um, it's expanded me a lot. And I think when you go back to kind of identities, the transitions in identity, I think really embracing an entrepreneur identity was also one of the biggest hurdles for me, because I think I always, we're students, and then we're like, okay, and then the next label is I'm a clinician, and then I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And so it's like we can embrace all of these, but I think entrepreneurship was hard for me, because I think talking money is hard. Um, Business is not something we're taught in school. And it's taken me time, but I think at this point in 4 years in, I think I embrace being an entrepreneur. I embrace being a licensed clinical social worker, being a daughter, being a wife, being a sister, that all of these roles are a part of me, and it impacts everything. But I know I went on and on forever, so I'll let you ask away.
I love hearing your story because, first of all, it's so easy to look at someone and think, "Oh, they just got there," right? And
Mm,
you see the success in that moment and you forget how much work, or you don't forget, you just don't realize how much work it took to get there. And hearing from you starting in undergrad and not knowing what you wanted to do is so powerful, because that's so I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I got a bachelor's and a master's in something, and I was like, "Stop, I want to do." And you have to know what you wanna do at 14 years old, freshman year of high school when they ask you. You don't need to know it at 18, 19 years old completely. You can figure it out as you go, and I love how you said, been working so hard and you get here and it's like, "This is it." It's not always gonna be exactly what we pictured it to be, and that's okay, but hopefully there's things that we can do to take that next step toward finding what we're looking for, and like you said, that culture wasn't really great, and it was bringing up a lot of anxiety, and making that step towards something that for entrepreneurship, which became so important for you and so amazing. So to see that it wasn't just this straight journey of constant success and excitement, that it was a lot of anxieties, a lot of back and forth and figuring it out, just so helpful for me as someone in school trying to figure it out. Doesn't have to be the straightforward path, and you're not falling off the path and wrong for not having it all figured out.
I think that, the journey of life is almost just trying to find courage day after day. And courage can look different for every single person. I think, courage for some folks, depending on where they're at in their journey, can look like I want to have the courage to get out of bed today, period. And that is courageous in and of itself. I think for others, it's, I want to be courageous and start a business today, but I think all of it requires courage. And courage to me is it's fears there. It's like, courage is when you're scared and you do something and you figure it out. But yes, the journey is not just a straight shot. It is also even now and as an entrepreneur and like I said, there's so much gratitude for um what I have and what we've been able to work towards. But that doesn't mean that day to day there isn't hardship. And again, it's a dance, I think, also for us as clinicians on like, what do we share? What do we not share? What if it's something I'm still in the, it's like, I never want to be the person who only shares successes, but also it can sometimes be difficult to share the hard, not because I want to hide it, but because I'm still in process. I'm still processing it myself. Like, wait, do I share this so that others can feel connected to this? And also, wait, am I ready to? Because I'm still deep in it. And so it's a dance. And I think that that has been something that with entrepreneurship, um, has been an ongoing learning process because when I transitioned from working for a company to then creating our company, one of the hardest parts wasn't actually starting the business. It was again, the mindset, the identity of, oh, like clients aren't just going to show up now. I don't just show up to my desk and like, okay, what clients, what caseload? Oh my gosh, all these clients. It didn't work that way anymore. It's I could have an amazing service and believe in the work that I can provide, but if no one knew that we had a service or that we existed, then there's this awesome service that people aren't going to access. And so it required me to really step out of my comfort zone and share like this is who I am, this is what we do, and kind of teetering around like how much about me do I want to share, because I also think as a clinician I can be an excellent clinician for many, but I'm not the right one for all. And so I think that that's where again it's not it's like as clinicians I think that that's the power of when we share a little bit about ourselves is that um I've had clients who say, "Kaylee, I saw you post about this, and I knew immediately you were my therapist. You were the therapist that I wanted to see." And so, and it required me to show part of myself, right? And so that's been a journey, and also ebb and flow, right? There are months with business that are amazing, and then there are months that are slower, just like any season, right? Just like the season of life, there is planting seeds, having them grow, harvesting it. And so it requires a lot of self regulation and trusting. Um, there's a purpose in each month and each season. There's a purpose even when things slow down. What is the slowing season trying to teach me? Um, learning all the time.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you talk about all of it right off the bat, and like all of the anxieties and fears I would have, right? Throughout all of it, like the ebbs and flows. Am I on the right track? Am I doing this right? Why don't more people know about it? Am I marketing myself enough? Like all of these anxieties and insecurities would be constantly coming up for me. And I know for me, it's very hard to kind of manage all of that when it gets overwhelming in my brain. So how do you kind of cope with those fears and anxieties when they come up and, like you said, self-regulate?
It has been I think that actually these 4 years of entrepreneurship have been the years that I have had no choice but to really look inward. I think prior to that, I would say grad school, because in grad school, there's all sorts of essays and readings and things that you have to do, and it's like, "Why do I have to do this reflection piece?" Like, come on, but I think there's a purpose for it now that I look at it. But in the moment, I thought, oh God, like I have to just respond to this person. Like, who cares? But these last 4 years, it's really, I've had no choice but to look inward. What does managing all of this look like? It depends on the day, it depends on the week and the month, right? I think management for me in these last 4 years, at times it's looked like feeling like I'm drowning and not doing a thing about it. Other times it's looked like leaning on others, talking about it. I'm so lucky that I have a business partner. I'm not doing this business venture on my own. And so with business, I at least feel like I have a team. It's just him and I, but I can share, hey, this is what I'm thinking, or we can bounce ideas or anxieties and kind of we always joke around. I'm like, I got anxiety today, so you gotta take it on today, hold the reins right now. Or he'll say, like, oh no, no, like today is my day. I'm anxious, so you gotta hold it down. So we kind of, we're very vocal about, I'm anxious about this, I'm worried about this, or hey, I'm having kind of a rough day. We are the workplace culture, right? And so we have established something that we allow ourselves to be honest about how we're doing on a personal level. Like just yesterday, um, we logged into our meeting that we have every week. He's like, "How are you?" And I'm like, "Not great. I'm just exhausted. I'm tired. And I just went on and on. I was like, "But anyway, let's get back to work." So there's been seasons of leaning on others, therapy. The therapy has also been part of my journey in these last 4 years. Um, I've recently gotten into yoga. Um, I'll tell you that I'm such a hater. I think that years ago, I tried out yoga, and again, it's very funny, like when you begin to make yourself slow down. I went to a yoga class and I was like, oh no, this is not for me, because I remember that it was like, when are we getting out of this position? Like, oh my God, next one already? And I was so irritated during the whole process of yoga. So forget it. I was like, no, yoga's not for me. But this year, what I began to notice is I can manage my mind, but what was more difficult was managing the body. So sometimes, even though we can say all of the right things or the helpful things, the body doesn't always listen. It's like, yeah, yeah, but I'm still anxious. So I gave it a go again. I went back to a yoga class, and I have really, really enjoyed it. I go to yoga classes that are restorative yoga, which is, really, it's really more focused on the breath and stretching the body, sitting in the positions. And I have found that to be really helpful in just the monitoring of self, because there are days when I go to yoga and I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And then there are days where my brain will do what I described. I'm like, how much longer? How many more breaths in this position? And to me, before, right, when I first did yoga, I would judge it. And now I think, wow, I have such little patience right now that even just holding a position is irritating to me. I need to breathe it out. So it's I've used that. I on and off journal. I read. Um, I think reading is something that um, you know, I don't read for fun, because it's almost like my fun is like reading about mindset and self-help books and things like that. So I start books and then I never end them, because I'm like, okay, I think I think I'm done with this book for a second. Okay, let me get another one. But they all have these themes. So those are the things that I do to take care of myself. Some days I'm killing it, other days I'm not. Um, but I will say that I there's a lot more awareness that I have now about my mental health than I ever have in my
You have such a wide range of tools, and I love that because No, it's so important. I know for me, it like in the beginning, I was like, okay, journaling is going to be my thing. And then when I didn't have the energy to, or I didn't know what to write, or I just didn't, it just wasn't working or helping anymore. I was like, great, nothing works. And to see that you have this wide range of tools, and one of them even being just being honest, leaning on someone else for support and being honest about what you're feeling is huge because I think the messaging that I've received about being an entrepreneur or a leader is pretending like you have it all together and fake it till you make it, right? That was kind of the messaging that I learned. And I would have totally gone into life thinking, just put on that smile, pretend everything's fine, and it will be fine. As long as other people think you're fine. And with one of your tools just being like being honest and saying, I'm having these anxieties today, I'm worried about this, is huge because it is that self-awareness and that'll not just the self-awareness, but comfort and vulnerability to be able to express it to someone else and collaborate and work on it together. See group projects, collaborating, being able to kind of communicate and work through it together instead of feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders alone. And you just have to smile and pretend like it's fine.
Yeah, I think fake it till you make it. I mean, I've heard that one too, and I guess it's like I'm of the framework of like take what you need and leave what you leave doesn't, serve you in that way, fake it till you make it. To me, um I I think what's complicated about that is like the fake part. But I would say it's like be courageous until you make it, till you do it, till you like, because I think courage, like I think the fake and courage is kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna go do it anyway. So I guess I'm faking it. Versus like repress what's really happening, and just do it, I'll tell you, it was 2 months ago, more or less, we went and did this presentation in Napa, and it was the first in-person uh, speaking engagement that we've done. So we do a lot of like workshops and speaking engagements for organizations and things like that. But it was the first one that we did in person, right? Because since we started our practice, I mean, we got into our practice and a few weeks it's like we started the process of establishing our corporation, and then the world shut down, and so we did our practice for years just like this, right? So anyway, we go do this speaking engagement in person, and I don't know what it was, but I mean, I'm always nervous to speak, I love it, but I'm always nervous. But this was one of those times where it felt so beyond overwhelming. Um, where again, I couldn't regulate the body. Like deep breaths. I'm like, girl, you can do this. You practice this. We're good. Long story short, we began this presentation. It was on storytelling. And I'm telling my story, and at some point, I kid you not, I completely blank on what I had already said. And I'm on this stage, right, with Brandon, my business partner, and I look over at him and I'm like, and I out loud, there's like 100 people looking at me, at us, and I say, what was I saying? I completely lost my train of thought. And I'm like, what was the next thing that I usually say, Brandon? And and it was like there was like laughter, but not laughter of like, I'm laughing at you. It was almost like we've been there. It was almost like it happens kind of thing. And he was like, Kaelly, this is usually what you talk about. And I was like, yes, thank you. That's why I needed a partner here. And so then I continued, and it was such an incredible outcome. It's like so many people stayed behind and talked to us about not just what we discussed, but just even how we showed up, And so was I in some ways I couldn't fake it. I was so nervous, I was excited, but my nerves got to me, and at some point I didn't even know what I was saying, and I had to ask a partner out loud. And so I don't know, it's like fake it till you make it, take what you leave from it. I mean, take what you want, leave what you don't. But yeah, that's what we're doing here. Every day.
I love that because it's just being honest. Like, I don't, I lost my train of thought or I'm overwhelmed. It doesn't have to be, I'm perfect all the time. It needs to be perfect all the time. And I know that that's the messaging that my friends and I are learning to overcome. We were just going through finals for the spring semester like a week ago, and we were like, we have to be perfect. We have to be perfect. And we have to know everything. And it's like, realistically, you're not going to remember every single definition that you were taught this semester and know exactly how to apply it when it's suddenly just put in front of you on the test. And it's okay. So learning that you don't have to be perfect all the time. You can figure it out as you go is something that the messaging we're learning to unwire. And hopefully, I'm the worst of all of us. So hopefully, we begin to work through that. And that's what I love so much about your story is the honesty through it all. That it doesn't have to be this straight shot perfect thing all the time. It's there's fear, there's anxieties, there's unknown. And all of that is part of what makes journey so amazing. Kaelly, you are absolutely incredible. As we are wrapping up, can you offer a piece of advice? I'm going to say to a grad student like me who's kind of figuring out where they are, what their next steps are, what piece of advice would you offer?
Ooh. I guess there's two things. I think the first is, and I think I share this one just from my own personal story, is to get anchored in your story, to really remember the power of your story. I think that that can take us a really long way. And so again, it's like today's just a page of the whole story. And so um remembering that, anchoring yourself in the story. And then encourage mistakes, embrace mistakes. I too am still in recovery for being a perfectionist, only showing up when I think I am great at something and not showing up at all unless it's perfect. And I think that sometimes when we can do our best, but know that it's not the best yet, and see that we're going to be okay and make those mistakes, and in whatever, I mean, however you want to take the word fail, just see yourself continue to push forward. I think for all grad students, it's you don't have to know it all. It's all right. Even in sessions, if you don't know, you don't know. Let's figure this out together. You are in collaboration, always with somebody, whether that's in collaboration with myself, in collaboration with a client, it's okay to not know, and make those mistakes. Those mistakes guide you. I think I could have looked at, when I arrived to this position that I had been like, check, 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 right? I could have arrived and just looked at that as a failure because in that moment it felt that way. How is it possible that I've been working so hard, going in student debt, and this is how I feel? In some ways, it felt like I failed because I'm not happy. I did the things, but I'm not happy. So what is this all for then? Um, but when I anchored again in my story, it gave me like, okay, let's redirect. It gave me purpose on, I don't know how to start a business, but if I look at my story, what is the type of service that I would have needed and how can I provide that to others? All right, let's go do it. And, so make those mistakes, embrace failure, and reach out to people. I love connecting with students. I have so many students. Majority of my clients are actually grad students, uh, helpers, like just in the helping field. I have a lot of Latina clients as well. So reach out to people. There's people that want to be of support too.
You are absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for joining me. How can people learn more about you and connect?
Yeah. How can they learn more about me? I'm on social media. You can find me at Kaelly Talks Therapy, or our business website, www.kandbtherapy.com.
Thank you so much for listening to Normalize the Conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast is an initiative of Inspiring My Generation, focusing on normalizing the conversation, bringing education and awareness to the forefront, and amplifying global voices to spark change and hope. Inspiring My Generation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization on a mission towards suicide prevention through awareness, conversation, education, and support. Connect with us on Instagram at Inspiring My Generation and visit our website inspiringmygeneration.org to learn more about our work and how you can make a difference.